Hey, hey, round one, instant reaction. You know we gotta talk about it.
We doing everything they talk about. You know I'm everything a boss about. Not putting work and gotta.
Here we go. What a great week. What a great round one. What an amazing week. What a telling week. What a week we just had in European League of Football, round one of the playoffs. Both games. Yes, despite the score, both games were great games, and we're here to talk about it, right? All right, Athletes Forum Podcast. Your host, Jamal Clay. Again, subscribe to the channel, drop a comment, like the video, share with a friend, and let's get the conversations brewing in the chat. All right. So round one. Round one was a good sense of telling a lot about these teams, right? First, we're gonna start with the one that just became, fresh off everyone's brain, right? The game that was the trilogy of the week, right? And I am talking about the Nordic Storm beating the Rhine Fire for a second time this season. Now, the game that happened last week, kind of vanilla. A lot of people said they were excited about it, but these two teams knew they were going to play each other again. All right. So they weren't really going to dive into like their bag, so to say. Right. But needless to say, Storm came out on top, with the victory in this game. And let me talk about like the teams and what it means to teams that heading forward. First, the Fire. All right. It's obvious. The 3P is no longer, right? There won't be a three-time ELF champion. The reigning champions have been dethroned, but you will never be able to take away that they are two-time ELF champions and the only ones to do it, right? So, how should I feel about the season? If I would have told you that the Surge kind of overperformed, right? Kind of it kind of doesn't sound right, right? It kind of sounds weird that the not the Surge, the Fire, right? The Fire overperformed, right? The two-time champs, right? But you got to think about what they lost and who they brought in, right? You replaced, Jadrian Clark with Chad Jeffries, right? You didn't really find your running game in Jeff Scott till like midway through the season. You've had subpar American talent at wide receiver. Harlan Kofi didn't really come together till the end of the year. Defense was strong and physical, but obviously, they weren't able to, you know, pull the whole way of the team together, right? So you think about all the losses, all the changes, right? We go from Coach Kent being the head coach, D coordinator, to going back to just being the DC, even though they pronounce it's got to be assistant head coach. Fred Armstrong comes in, becomes assistant head coach. Then he passes over the offensive coordinator duties. So the Ryan Fire, in my opinion, overperformed the season. I didn't think they were going to make the playoffs, and the fact that they got hot when they did and they made the playoff run, right? I think they had a good year. I think they overperformed. Now it's interesting to see what they got going forward, right? Does Armstrong continue to be the head coach, replacing Tom Sula? Obviously, that will put Kent back at the coordinator. He's got to find an offensive coordinator. And if there's one thing you know about Armstrong, he wants to build a physical defense. So he's going to make sure he has a running back. I hope they bring Scott back. Again, started off slow, but I like the type of talent that, he was able to bring to the table. They got to find an A receiver talent, right? If I just threw a name off the top of my head, go get Terry Robinson. Go get Terry Robinson to be a receiver. Him and Harley Kofi will have a day. All right. But the Fireman, they weren't able to pull this one apart, right? They weren't able to get the drives that they needed when they needed them, right? Offense just a little too slow in regards to, when the urgency was needed, they really couldn't get things going. So the outcome was the outcome. The Storm, right? The Storm, not only do they become the second team in ELF history in your first year to make the playoffs. Wait, I phrase that. Nope, there have been other teams. You think about the Raiders, the Vikings. So, but I guess what I'm saying is they become, since the Madrid Bravos, right? Because before the Madrid, there was a little break, but since the Madrid Bravos, who made the playoffs the second time, they won their first game, right? And it was a home playoff game, right? Jaden Clark, obviously, he did what he was supposed to do. The run game got going a little bit. Defense played well. Despite all the injuries, the defense played well. And I got to give a shout out to Brandon Noble. Obviously, he just got the extension, right? So the defense played well, which was encouraging. Again, Chad was out. X is out. Ludwig Myron was out, right? Luke Glenna did a good job back there, playing safety. You think about Phil Holm, who's back in the mix, right? Khaled, who was holding it down at the corner spot. Max Parkinson, who didn't play last week versus Fire, played this week, right? So the Nordic Storm did what they were supposed to do, right? And granted, a lot of people think that they might have been frauds or they may not have been as good as advertised. But we have to give credit to their defense because in these big games or big games that we think they are going into it, they show up. You think about the Frankfurt game, they showed up. Maybe they slept on them going into the bye week, and obviously that loss happened. You think about the first Rhine game, they showed up, right? So we have to give credit to that Nordic Strom defense who has played well, right? And John Stroop has those boys, heading into Vienna, going into the second round, right? So the Nordic Storm beat the Rhine Fire. And what's becoming a good little matchup, right? It's not my favorite trilogy, right? You think about all the Frankfurt Fire days, which was horrible. This was a little better. You think about the I feel like there was other ones in there, but I can't think of off the top of my head. But we're gonna get my favorite trilogy this week, and we'll dive into that a little bit here. All right. But the Nordic Storm are going to play Vienna. Now, what does this look like for Vienna? And we'll dive into this a little bit during the week, but what's it look like to play Vienna? I hope Brandon Noble gets some sleep because he's gonna have his hands full. He's gonna have his hands full with a arsenal of weapons that Vienna has that he hasn't seen all year. Right, a quarterback, a running game, an offensive line that may have 3 ELF All-Stars, every receiver that could go for 100 at any moment. Yannick Meyer, who's a big play waiting to happen. Can't forget about Reese Horn. Can't forget about Nora Torre, right? This is a team that, when healthy and when, they get things rolling, like it's gonna be a tough outing. So that's gonna be the matchup, but it's gonna be interesting to see, right? Jadrian Clark against Ben Holmes, right? Ben Holmes has never beaten Jadrian Clark, right? These two matched up last week in the last year in the championship game. So we'll see how this one pans out. But this is gonna be a great game in Vienna, and winner's going to the ship. Winner is going to the ship, right? And it's exciting to see. So we got the division winner of the North versus the division winner of the East battling in the semis, and we'll dive into that later this week. All right. Next, the Surge versus Madrid. Listen, I'm gonna just keep this frank. Madrid could not handle the Surge defensive line. All right. It was like the Space Jam Monstars out there, right? Surge up front dominated this whole game, right? You think about Madrid and what they wanted to come in and do. So they couldn't block the stunts, right? They couldn't block the stunts of the Surge D line. So what they tried to do, they try to go a little quick game, hitting the dumps to the running back, screens to slow down the Surge D line. RPOs to get those linebackers to think, and then worked for a little bit, got things moving until, the Surge kind of figured things out, right? So they started to play a little bit more man on earlier downs, play more zone, right? Reese Net started to get away, on those 4th and shorts, 3rd and shorts, and using his legs. Well, they played more zone so they keep an eye on them so they collapse, right? So they stopped those sneaks. So Surge had an answer to everything that Madrid was throwing at him, and Madrid just could not get things rolling. And it all started up front. Granted, obviously, Justice Seelig playing hurt. Molina had a decent game. Reed did all he could do. But really, this game was dominated up front. And I know Aaron Cruikshank is probably going to be heading into another league. Not official. I don't know this for a fact. But just off the performance he had this year, the most dominant Triple Crown we've ever seen, he's probably going to be heading into an American league here shortly. I would love to see Reese in that back. Just give me one more season to read, all right? And granted, I don't know what his plans are, but I'm hoping, all right? Justice Seelig going to college, right? Do they bring Nico Barrow back, right? I hope they see. The thing with all these teams that are good is that they have camaraderie, they have chemistry, right? A lot of teams have staying and playing together, right? So how does Madrid keep this together, right? Brandon Oswin, who was an O-lineman from Possum, he played great this year, right? Right? I'll be excited to see that group back, right? And defensively, listen, they got to figure some things out. Right? You got to figure out another pass rusher, right? I think you'll be fine with just 1A at DB versus going 2As at DB, but you have to get another pass rusher, right? You have to get another pass rusher. Your linebackers are decent enough, but if you get another pass rusher outside of Alejandro Fernandez, then you're cooking. You think about that 2022 Barcelona team where you had Alejandro Fernandez and Mike Sam on the outside, and Alejandro Fernandez was able to capitalize off that because Mike Sam was getting a lot of the attention, right? So I would go get an American pass rusher if I was Madrid, right? I'll throw a name at you because I did it for the previous with the Rhine Fire, right? Rhine Fire need a receiver. I want to get them Terry Robinson. Madrid need a pass rusher. Go get DeMarco Artis. You're not going to get Kyle Kitchens, right? Or maybe. I don't know. But if you don't, you're not going to get Max Parkinson, right? I don't think so. I think DeMarco's a true free agent. Maybe he'll consider Parrish, but that'll be a good 1-2 punch with him and Alejandro Fernandez, and you bring back YP, right? Then you got 3 pass rushers. The more, the merrier. The Surge. Listen, I told everyone this was the most mysterious team heading into the playoffs. This was a team of unknowns. This was a team that was scary because we never saw their full potential. We never saw what they truly could be, and they showed you, right? They showed you that this team is going to be dominant on defense, right? Again, they just let the D-line eat all day, right? Because if the D-line is eating, you don't have to blitz. And secondaries, they like to play with a lot of DBs, all right? So they're just going to sit in coverage all day, right? Raheem Wilson, my God, what a great one-on-one performance. Following Aaron Krushek across the field, locking him up, maybe except 2 plays. Raheem Wilson's a dog. Raheem Wilson is a dog, probably a top DB in the league, right? It may not show up on stats, but probably a top DB in the league. And then you think about offensively, man, listen, this is a warning. This is a warning. If you get Big Cognac dancing, it's game over. All right, it's game over. Big Cognac start dancing on you. All right, and this is a team, obviously, Kai Hunter, veteran offensive line. Again, Louis Geyer, beautiful touchdown. It was a cover 2 bust that Madrid ran. They didn't get the middle runner to get deep enough. Riley Hennessy hits Louis Geyer for a touchdown. Beautiful, right? Mike Harley playing with a chip on his shoulder. Mike Harley Jr., right? It's proven. So this is a Surge team that, mysterious, may not be mysterious anymore, but it's scary. All right, it's scary. And now they're going to Munich as we look ahead. Now the Surge team is going to Munich, right? This is gonna be my favorite trilogy. This is the best ELF rivalry, right, that we have. Munich versus the Surge. This is the Pittsburgh Steelers, Baltimore Ravens of the ELF, right? 2 teams where there's true bad blood, true, respect for one another, but 2 teams that are gonna give it their all. I'm talking about Riley, Big Cognac Hennessy versus Russell Tabor. We got great receivers, Mike Harley Jr., Malik Stanley, Louis Geyer, right? Marvin Rooch, 2 teams that are fairly similar, right? I mean, this is going to be phenomenal. 2 offensive lines that are great defensively. I think Surge might have the edge, might have the better defense, but we can't rule out that Ravens defense that plays with a grit, right? A chip on the shoulder that mimics their head coach, right? Kentrell Ellison. An offense that is unpredictable, right? You got to get rugby plays. You got to get soccer plays. You may get basketball plays. Ain't no telling what you got to get from Kyle Callahan. This game, Surge versus Munich. And think about all the great games we had this year. This game has potential to be the best game we've seen thus far. Right. And that Storm Vikings game is going to be a good game, too. 2 great quarterbacks. Right. And this is probably one of the better, semifinals that we've had. Right. In terms of quarterback and talent and coaching and all that stuff. This game, Stuttgart Surge versus Munich, is going to be legendary. And I want you all to tune in because it's going to be great. All right. Thank you for checking me out. Again, had to give you the instant reaction. We're heading to the semis. We're heading to Vienna. We're heading to Munich. Winner goes to the ship. Right. Drop a comment. Let me know what you think. Athletes Fun Podcast.